No reason that's in any way sensible, I got this burning desire to write a novel. What guides me in life is always my gut. The sweet spot when you're just writing away and it's all just flowing and you're hearing the voices in your head. I'm not joking. This is what I do with my fears. You'll think I'm nuts. The minute I had that, the whole story unfolded.
This is the Promise of Possibility podcast, sharing stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things so you can be inspired to do so too. I'm Maruja Bohart. Now let's dive in. Denise, it is so good to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
It's been a while since we've seen each other in person, but we've known each other for almost 8 years. Like I was thinking back, and I can't believe it's like 8 to 9 years, which is amazing. I was mentioning it to you before. So this podcast is all about sharing stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And you definitely are a person that has done and are still doing extraordinary things. And so I kind of want to set the stage. When we met, it was a workshop. Can you remember what type of workshop it was? I remember it was Helen Shaw.
Yeah, that's what I remember. And I was thinking, what was that? I couldn't remember.
No, I can't remember either. But it was, I remember, okay, so we were in Dublin, setting the stage. We were in Dublin, Ireland. And it was some kind of creative workshop. And coming out, I was walking to try to catch the bus or whatever I was going to do because I was not driving in Ireland. And you so lovingly and kindly said, I'll give you a ride. And you gave me a ride home. And the rest was history. And we became fast friends.
I know. It's like we'd always known each other.
I know. It was amazing. It was amazing. So, okay, take us back. I will start with saying you're an author, you're a writer, and an incredibly accomplished one at that. And I know personally a number of people in the audience that are aspiring writers or that have always had a dream to write or always, have a novel in them or an autobiography in them. So can you take us back and just to when did this love for writing start? Have you always wanted to write? Can you take us back?
Sure. Yeah. No. So, I go into schools because I write for teenagers as well as adults, and I talk to them about story. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I say is that when I was in school back in the day, mm-hmm. I never thought I was good at writing because our English teacher would select the work of the same 4 people all the time to read out. So I think the rest of us just thought we were useless. So I always talk about story as opposed to writing because I think a lot of people have a mental block about writing, thinking that it's just a really hard thing that only certain people can do, which I don't believe. I think that we all have stories within us, and it's the most natural thing in the world, and we've been doing it since we first opened our eyes. So that's the way I like to look at it. And so for me, how it happened was I had no plan to be a writer ever. I was a nurse, then I was a China restorer, then a pharmaceutical sales rep. Then I got into PR, went back to college, did PR, ran my own PR business. And then how I got into writing was a friend of mine asked me would I do a master's with her in public relations, because that's what we trained in. And the year that we qualified was the first year that could do this master's. And I said, well, so it was a busy time. I was running a business. I was a baby and I was pregnant. And I just said, does this involve study? Because if it does, I'm not doing it. And she said, no, it's all research. And I said, okay, I might do that then. So I did it, loved it. She didn't even do it. She just,
oh my God.
She didn't do it. I know. But it was the best thing ever. And I really enjoyed it. And I went back to Cork, where I'm from, and did research on how the pharmaceutical industry communicated with activists.
Okay.
And so, so I know, and there was no book. There was sort of no handbook for anybody who would be a potential target from any pressure group. And so I felt someone should write that, so I did. So I wrote that, and then that was published. And then, for no reason that's in any way sensible, I got this burning desire to write a novel. And so I know, mad. And I was at the time when I was like, my life was so busy. I had, at this point, I think I was ready to give birth. Running a business. It was like crazy. And then myself and Joe, my husband, sat down and we just had this conversation about, well, maybe you could give up the business and as in walk away from a lucrative business to write fiction when you had no book, no agent, no publisher. Yeah, that sounds sensible. So
and he came up with this idea? Go, Joe. Really?
Well, Joe supported me. Now, he thought I was mad walking away from business. He thought, well, could you like maybe just start writing while you're doing the business and then sort of set it off, which would be the sensible thing to do. And I thought, no, I really feel, because I always go with my gut feeling. I'm always guided by my gut feeling. My gut feeling said, no, go. As long as you're trying to do everything, you'll never write a good novel, and you'll just be stuck. And I was getting angry with everyone. I was getting angry with my clients even, because I wasn't doing what I really wanted.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I know. And it's not even a kind of a thing you're thinking through. It's just real.
It's like sort of primal almost. It sounds very recognizable. Yeah.
So that's what happened. Well, it also allowed me spend time with my kids when they were small, which was so nice.
Yeah.
So that's how I got into it.
Wow.
And then I had nothing to start with. So I do work very hard, and I am a bit of a workaholic. So I treated like a complete career. Mm-hmm. Worked really hard.
What did that look like? What is, because I think for a lot of people, when they're aspiring, or storytellers, let's call it storytellers instead of writers. I love that word. Storytelling. I think storytelling is so important in my loves in music and in marketing and in everything, and in writing, like songwriting. So yes, storytelling. So what did that look like? Like working really hard, does that mean that you sit behind your computer at 9 a.m.? Like, can you take us through one of those days? Like, what is your process like?
Oh, now, because I don't have small kids and they have flown away, I could spend the entire day writing. And I do spend a lot of time writing because I have different projects. Yeah. So I usually would have maybe 2 projects on the go. We'll do one in the morning, one in the afternoon. I'd always get out walking because I love to walk in nature and stuff. That's really important.
Yes.
And do things like Pilates and all that kind of stuff. But the important thing for me actually is to pull myself away from the desk, because that's when you kind of are at your most creative. And when you work as much as I do, you have to make yourself do that. You have to say, okay, come on down, Denise, you need to break. And that's when a lot of the ideas come.
Amazing.
So to look at my life, it looks really boring. But actually to be in my life, in my head, it's amazing, because you're more than one person. You're always at least 2 people, because I become my main character when I'm writing. So I live in any one day 2 lives at least.
Yes.
Sometimes 3. So to look at me, it looks boring. But to be me, it's not.
It's very exciting. No, you don't look boring, but no.
If I was just at the desk, all day.
Yes. But that's fascinating. When you say you become the character, because you're actually telling the story from the character's perspective, right?
Yeah, no, I'm writing, I'm hearing the dialogue. It's like, kind of feels like channeling,
wow.
That it's not, I'm not even, well, that's the sweet spot when you're just writing away and it's all just flowing and you're hearing the voices in your head. So
amazing. And okay, let's talk about the first book that you wrote and published, what was it? And what was that process like? I mean, how long was this ago? Because was self-publishing a thing back then?
No. So back then, that was, God, was it 15 years ago? Was it more? I can't even remember when my first book was published. That's probably just as well. But it was, there was a book called Turning Turtle. And it was about, so when I actually gave up, then I wrote, pretty much from my experience. So I wrote about a woman who gives up her job in public relations to write a novel.
Wow, yeah.
And everything goes wrong. And it has to be, of course, much more dramatic than your own life, because it's not that exciting. So then people hilariously thought it was autobiographical. They thought it was my life, which didn't bode well for my relationship. It didn't affect my relationship, but I'm saying people thought I had this really bad relationship,
Yeah.
but anyway, who cares? Yeah, no, so it was really interesting. So I wrote the book. I had done no study on how to write a novel. I just wrote it. And then I sent it out without editing, which is completely bonkers. What happened was I knew that I would get rejections because that is what happens.
Yeah.
So what I did was I started working on a second book so that the rejections wouldn't stop me. So I started off on something else.
Amazing.
And off I went. Yeah. And then the rejections started coming in. But what was interesting was even though some of them were no, they were positive. Like they were saying there was a really strong voice.
Oh, wow.
And that's the thing. It was the voice.
That's
so
cool.
One agent came back to me, really nice man, and he said, "Have you edited this?" And I said, "No." I didn't say what's editing, but I could have. And he showed me. And my God, it was transformative. It just really lifted the book. And they're really just simple things that you do to edit. And I got so into it. Like I had decided I wouldn't go back to the first book. I would just keep going with the second book because I was really into that. But I just got obsessed with the first book again.
Wow.
Did all the ends, then sent it back to the people who had given me a rejection, but in a positive way. Yeah. And I got an agent and a publisher. So within 9 months of, which is an interesting gestation period.
Yes.
Starting to write the novel, I had an agent, a publisher, well, and a novel, luckily enough.
That's amazing. That's remarkable.
And it wouldn't have happened if I tried to do it while I was, still running the business.
Yeah.
I was reading, to be honest. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And then, so how did it progress since then? I mean, I think back to when we met, you had a book that just came out. It was The Accidental Life of Greg Miller.
Yeah.
Isn't that what you won? Like you won, it was like #1 Amazon author, best-selling author or something for that, which is fabulous. Anyway, but let's go back. The butterfly novels, where were those? Like whereabouts were those?
Okay, so I did 4 novels of sort of women's fiction. The second 2 were published by Penguin, and they were translated in Germany and Holland. And
Dutch.
So
yeah, I have to find one and read it in Dutch.
Oh yeah, you can tell me. Yeah, because that's the thing when the translation happens. I have no idea whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. It could be brilliant, it could not. I don't know. I just have to trust. But so I finished the 4 books, and then what happened was something really interesting happened. I was meeting a friend of mine in a coffee shop to do a picture book together. She was a visual artist, and I was a writer, and we both are passionate about picture books because they're like an art gallery with a story combined. Just like we wouldn't be into that. So anyway, we were doing a kind of a brainstorm. We were coming up with desperate ideas, and one of the ideas that we came up with, which definitely was desperate, was that a man, dad, would go away to work, and when he'd come back, like he'd go to Spain or something like that, and when he come back, and he'd tell his little girl all about the country that he'd been to, and it would be educational, but it would also be boring. So my friend went to the bathroom, and when she was gone, this voice came into my head, really, really passionate, angry, sarcastic, vulnerable voice. And I thought, whoa, what is this? Like I could hear it so clearly, the exact words, the tone. And it was a teenage girl talking to her dad, giving him hell. And so I had just finished that 2-book deal with Penguin. And so I was kind of free to what I call play. So I just listened to the voice, and I just took it down, hand wrote it, just to see where it was coming from and to see what it was. I didn't know whether it was going to be like a short story, a novel, absolute rubbish. I didn't know. So I just thought, this is fun. This is why I'm writing anyway. So I followed the voice, and it turned out that the girl was called Alex. And the reason she was furious with her dad was her mom had died 6 months previously, and he just wasn't there for her. But we discovered later in the novel it's because he was struggling himself, but that's not the way it came across to her. It came across to her like she lost both parents.
Wow.
When
you say, I'm sorry to interrupt this incredible story, but when you say it turns out that that must have come to you, like how did that happen? Yes.
Yeah. It's just in the writing down, in the handwriting of her voice and her dialogue, the whole story just unfolded.
Incredible. It's incredible. Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Continue speaking.
So that actually became a trilogy then, because when I was a teenager, I always thought that everybody thought like I did. I was really naive. And when I fell in love for the first time, I realized, whoa, everybody thinks so differently. And so I wanted to write a teenage series where the story of the first girl would continue through the second and third girl. So there are three friends, and on the outside, they look really similar. They sound very similar. They dress quite similarly. And you have an opinion. So Alex's story, you also meet Sarah and Rachel, and you have a complete opinion of both of those from Alex's point of view. And the second story is Sarah's story. And I personally didn't like her that much. And I thought she was very mature and not a great friend, very optimistic and lots of positive things about her, but she's not somebody that I would have hung out with myself.
Right.
So when it came to write her story, it was important. It was important to me to do it, but I didn't want to because I didn't like her. So what I did was, and I know you use The Artist's Way, don't you, Marga?
Yes, an amazing book. Yes.
So I was doing The Artist's Way, and this is a book. Well, it's more like a course or a program for creativity. And one of the things it suggests is that once a week you take yourself on an artist's date. You go off on your own, nobody's allowed to come, and you nourish your inner child by doing something fun for yourself. So I was going to go to the Royal Hospital Kilmainham, which is actually a jail, a prison, or Kilmainham jail actually. And when I was driving in the car, I suddenly realized Sarah was going to shoplift. The minute I had that, the whole story unfolded.
Oh, wow.
And it was one of the most magical experiences. And it's one of the most beloved books. The characters of Sarah, Sarah really grew through that story, and she just became a rock. But also, it's a love story. So it's a love story about Sarah and Shane, and it's such a favorite.
Yes, I think if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I read them, but I think that was my favorite. Like, her character was so deep. Like, her, it just went really deep. Her personality, and I really, I love the trilogy actually. But yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, that's now been optioned by a production company, so hopefully it will be a film.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing!
Yeah,
congratulations!
Thank you. So sorry.
Go ahead.
So each of the books is from the point of view of a different girl, a different friend, so that you really see that when you look at the world from Sarah's point of view, that it's a completely different world. And I just really wanted that for teenagers, that opportunity. So I wrote those 3 books. Yeah. Then you mentioned self-publishing. So I decided to try self-publishing because I'm very entrepreneurial. Yes. And I probably am a bit of a control freak. I like to control my own, for instance, rather than just work for a PR company, I run my own. So it's natural for me to. And also because I worked in PR, I'm kind of marketing driven as well. So it was just
you know what you want. You know the vision for the book and how you want to see it and that whole process, yeah.
And I also wanted the adventure. I just wanted, I guess, well, I don't know how many lives we get. So I'm not going to say we've one life, but I like to make the most of the one that I'm having at the moment. And so I will try and be adventurous. So I thought, well, I'll try it out and see what it's like. So I changed my name to, I developed a pen name, Aimee Alexander. That's my kids' names combined. And I got my adult books that had been published by Penguin and the other one, I can't even remember, the first company, Gillan Macmillan. And I basically went back to them to see if I could just put them up as they were. And what was really interesting was in the period of time that had passed, which is actually about 8 years since the first one, so much had changed. That was so interesting for me to realize that, like, society had changed, perception of certain things like mental health issues had changed, and a lot of it was in like such a positive way. And I was like thrilled to discover that, because I think a lot of the news is so negative all the time. That I think we are actually progressing in so many ways, in so many positive ways. So that was a great experience. And then I published them myself. That was an amazing experience. So the book that was called Love Comes Tumbling became The Accidental Life of Greg Miller.
And that something that you had before. And did you rewrite anything? Did you edit parts of it, or was it?
I edited all of them. I had to, quite substantially. And also, I changed as a person too. So things about certain characters that I thought were great, I suddenly realized, I don't really like the way she's doing this. So I changed a bit of things like that too, which is interesting, I suppose. Growing up and having children makes you grow up a little bit more, I think. Certainly me, anyway.
Yeah, and you mentioned mental health. I mean, the book, I remember clearly, that was the first book I read by you, and it was a page turner. Like, I couldn't put it down. And it was fascinating. And I remember messaging you, what's going to happen to her? But the topic was, there was an underlying topic of mental health. And actually, in a lot of books that you write there, you do write about health issues. Like, I remember a couple of other books. Like, would that have to do with your health background, or where does that come from?
I think it does come from my health background, and maybe not just the fact that I was a nurse, but also that I am so interested in the body, how it works, how it goes wrong, how you can fix it, and that obviously extends beyond just medicine. Like, I love psychology as well, and definitely they're all my passions. But I will start out to write a book about something, and always subjects just bubble up themselves, or characters arrive that I hadn't planned, and I love all that. So yeah. I mean, even when I gave up nursing, I didn't plan to go into pharmaceutical sales, but sometimes, things just happen. And
you go with it.
Yeah.
Yes, and it always brings such a wealth of. I mean, I'm sure everything, because you did mention you did so many things before, in your past life before you started writing, but they've all fed, I'm sure. I mean, all your whole journey has fed into, the storyteller that you are.
Yeah, like I'm in LA at the moment. I'm just helping a friend who was making a short film, but I'm kind of hanging around, and she's also a university lecturer. I think she might even be a professor, but anyway, we went in to look at her students' work, and then she surprised me by getting me up to speak to them. What advice did I have? And one of the students contacted me afterwards to say she's going to travel, and maybe that's not the best for her career, but she wants to have her Emily in Paris moment. And I said, that is the best for your career, because the best thing you can do as a writer is have life experience.
Yes.
So yeah.
For sure. Fabulous. Okay, we're progressing, because your life, even the chunk of it that I know has, so much has happened, and it's just been so interesting. At that point, I remember that you were very interested. You wanted to go into film. You wanted to write for film or for TV. I mean, this was a big passion, right? I mean, this was something that you really wanted to do, or not?
So it is a huge passion. Like, my favorite storytelling medium is movies. That's my absolute favorite ever since I was small. So there were 4 kids in our family, and my parents would always do things for 2 at a time. I suppose it was just financial money balancing, and also age. But they would sneak the two oldest out to go to the cinema. I remember all the sweets that we'd get and everything. And what an adventure it was! Because it was also so furtive as well. Anyway, I love film. Always have. Like, Bambi was like massive influence on me. Like, oh my God, you mean your mother could die? I really genuinely think that was a huge influence, and still is, on me. But I was always a little bit nervous that I wouldn't be able to, that I just wouldn't be good enough. to write for film. So what happened was a friend of mine, you'll note the theme in my life, a friend asked me to do something and suddenly my life changes. This happened again. Yeah. So a friend asked me if I would go to a course with her. It was on screenwriting, and because she was a little bit shy. And I said, yeah, sure, I love movies, I'll go. So then, it was so good. And then I was so into it. And then I started doing more courses. And then I started to get funding to write scripts. And then I started to get producers optioning my stuff. So yeah, so it's been great.
Amazing. And you have a short film that has won awards and that is on the festival circuit at the moment, right?
Yeah.
Innkeeper?
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit, when did that come about and what was the process behind it?
Okay, so basically my daughter Aimee and myself, it was all Aimee's idea, but I obviously helped her do it because when she was a young teenager, I used to bring her into the city for drum lessons, and she would be quite distressed passing homeless people, and she wanted to do something about that. So every Christmas we'd make boxes. A huge effort will go to her. The amount of thought she put into these boxes that were gifts to people on the street, not charity. They were gifts, and she had a little note, and you should have seen all the things she put into them. Anyway, she was really, really into it, and so we'd have to prepare these months in advance. And we'd then on Christmas Eve, the two of us, from a security point of view, Aimee would always be the person, interacting with people, and I would be keeping an eye out, making sure that she was okay. So homeless is something that's always been kind of to the forefront of my mind. And so what happened was in Dublin, they were cleaning up around the canal, and there were a lot of homeless people in tents, and they came along with machines and scooped them up. And unfortunately, one of them that they scooped up, there was someone in it, and they experienced like life-altering injuries. Those are the words that were put in the press, life-altering. I wanted to know exactly how life-altering were they. Like, it's all couched, and I was furious and really upset, and I felt powerless to do anything because I didn't know the person. I didn't have a legal background. If I had, I would have, represented them pro bono, got compensation off the streets probably, but I couldn't do that. So what happened was a story just came flying to me. I literally wrote it down. I felt like it was a gift. So it's about a little girl, and it's comedy actually. She gets, she's a very spiritual little thing, and she gets the part finally of the Innkeeper in the school nativity play. And she's one job, and it's to say no to Mary and Joseph, but she can't do it. At the very, very end, we realize the reason why. Well, yeah, she's homeless. So that's the story. Yeah, but it's very, very funny and lighthearted, and you have no idea that the punch is coming in the end. So it's very powerful. But also, it's not totally like hopeless, because the little girl has learned from the story of Jesus that the stable wasn't forever. And so in the end, she says that to her mum. And somebody I know who was in that experience said to me, that's just so realistic that it's the child, supporting the parent.
Wow. Amazing. Oh, that's really, that's beautiful. No wonder that the film has done so incredibly well. And the little girl that plays the girl in the film, she's beautiful.
She's absolutely amazing. She was only 8, and she just stood out from the word go. Like, there was a moment where she just looked at the director like this and crossed her legs over and just looked at him like this, as if we are going to work. And I just thought, oh my God, we need her. She's brilliant. And she was brilliant.
Oh my God.
Too. Yeah.
Was she the one that, because the film won an actor award as well, was she the one that?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, totally deserved. Wonderful.
That's amazing. That's just, I get goosebumps because I remember, the times when, when I was in Ireland and we were close, and I remember that process of, like being so into that, you were so into wanting to turn your stories into film. And it's just, it's just so wonderful to, to be here now and to see how incredible you've done. And it's so well deserved. Absolutely. So I'll try not to gush too much because I'm like literally so happy and so beyond proud of everything that you're doing and you have done. Excuse me. So and you also write for TV. Is there a difference between, I'm sure there is, but the process of writing, for like when you're going to write a novel and writing for a screenplay or writing for, I mean, is it a different process? Do you come at it from a different perspective? Do the stories still come through you, or does it start with a character? Of course, I think when you're writing for TV and it's a TV series, you have certain parameters that you have to write from, right? Like into. But how is that process compared to writing for novels?
So, all three are different. So if I do TV, I suppose TV versus film, and then film and TV versus novels, maybe. So the novels are very, very different because for me, they just flow themselves, and I don't try and contain them structurally. But you can't really do that with a screenplay because you've only got a certain amount of time. A page in a screenplay is a minute, and you tend to only have like 90 to 120 minutes. 120 is long, although saying that to Oppenheimer and but yeah, you should be aiming for 90. I think you should be aiming for 90 to 100 really. So you're trying to get so much information into so little space. So there's this thing that I teach when I go into schools, and it's called show don't tell, and it's really how to get something across by showing it. So TV and film are so visual, and like you don't really use voiceover that much. You can't really show the thoughts of can't hear the thoughts of the main character or any of the characters. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to show them visually. So I'll give you one example that just blew me away. So I don't know whether you've seen Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, that film. It's a Martin McDonagh film. I love it so much. It's got this really, really angry character. She's furious. I do love angry characters. Anyway, she's Frances McDormand, and her daughter, her teenage daughter, has been murdered brutally, and they haven't found her. And the Frances McDormand character is furious with the police, and she takes out these big billboards and she puts them, or gets them right beside the road, blaming the police and the chief of police in particular for not doing their job. But she's so angry that she could be unlikable. I have to say I still liked her, but he wanted to show that she was an okay person. She was a good person actually until all this happened, and she's still a good person. And he did that in 1 second of screen time, and it was this. So she's going in to buy the posters, and she looks on something, catches her eye on the windowsill, and it's an insect that's upside down, and she just reaches over and flips it over. And that we know in like 1 second. So that's the kind of
so clever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And would that be, do you as a writer put in those notes, or do you have like a showrunner or a producer or, like a director that adds to what you wrote?
Well, it's completely collaborative, but you would be putting that in the screenplay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd want it, like you have to put in what you want to see on the screen. You do have to write it into the script.
Okay.
And the clearer you make it, the better, that it's not good. Because a director comes along then, well, again, television is different from film because with television, the writer has more control. Okay. With film, it's the director's medium. That's what they say. And the director is the boss. I mean, each film will have its own story in terms of its own experience of the people working on it and how that plays out. Sometimes you've got a writer-director who's the same person. Sometimes you've got a director who is so encouraging with the writer that it's very, very collaborative. And then sometimes you have some director will come along and just want to change quite a lot. And I've known that to happen. It hasn't happened to me yet, but it does happen.
Yeah.
So the novel is solitary, very solitary, until you give it to your editor. They'll give you notes, and you do the notes. Still solitary. Film is collaborative, and TV is even more collaborative, in my experience, from the writer's point of view.
Right.
And so on the show that I work on, the way it works is each episode, well, there's two different types of writer. There's the writers who break all the story,
Okay.
skeleton of all the episodes, and then you've got the writers who write the script, the episode.
Right.
I'm one of those. So each episode will have three storylines, and one is more dramatic, one is sort of middle dramatic, and one is kind of the light, maybe elements of lightness to balance the drama.
Right.
So that's fun. That's really fun too.
Brilliant. And I mean, having said that, saying that, you know, it's so collaborative, and of course it's important to find somebody that you can work with well, you know, so that creative process is, I guess it's the same with music, you know, you have a producer that you work with well, and that, you know, that creative process can just flow. Have you ever considered directing?
Yes, I am considering that now. I'm over here in LA, and I've just been helping a friend who is directing her own short film. And there is a short film that I would like to direct. So I hope I will. Yeah. Wow.
Amazing. And with the process that's going on, you know, the book, the butterfly novel that's going to be turned into a film. How is that compared to the novel? How much changes, and how much do you have control over that?
Yeah. So I have written the script, and it actually won a big award in the States, the Page Award. So that was great. And the producers really like it. They don't want to change it too much. I have changed it a little bit, but it's definitely not exactly the same as the book. It can't be, because you just can't fit everything in. You have to streamline. So you have to really pick a theme and stick to that. So there are certain things that have to go, unfortunately. It is a little bit different, but that's the way it has to be. I mean, it's the same characters, it's the same storyline, but it's a slimmer storyline, if you know what I mean. Like there's a whole subplot in the novel that just it can't go in.
How did you reconcile that? Like, how do you come to terms with that?
Because I did try and put it in the beginning. Yeah. And it really wasn't working. There was a point where it worked really well in the end, but while it was being threaded through, it just didn't seem relevant. And it's better without it.
Yeah. So it's better. It makes it much better if you're the one that, I mean, you as a creator feels that and can let that go, you know, rather than have somebody take it out.
Yeah. It was a subplot about another character. So it was the continuation of Alex's story.
Yes.
In Sarah's story. So that worked in the book, but it didn't work in the film, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what happened. Yeah, no, I didn't. There was one thing that I really miss is that there's a character called Louis in Sarah's story. It's her brother, and in the novel he gets a nice big chunk, and he gets much smaller. So I love Louis. So I was a little bit
Louis. Yes,
less Louis. Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, so thinking, you know, really always my goal is for whoever's listening or watching and wherever they are in life, whether it's, you know, this they want to do or whatever else, that they get inspired, that first of all, life circumstances don't mean that you can end up doing your passion, which you are such a perfect example of, or, you know, you can choose your passion at any point in life. And, you know, you've turned to film and TV at, you know, you're still looking spectacularly young, but at a more, you know, after 50, right? I mean, you've started really getting into this after 50, which I think is fabulous. I think it's, you know, we are our own worst enemy when we try to hold ourselves back and thinking that, oh, I'm too old, or I'm not good enough, or, you know, and there is, of course, a journey that you have to go through. And, in the arts, particularly, I think us as artists, and I think storytellers are absolutely artists. And the Artist's Way, you mentioned that book, is so transformative as well. But there's often times where, you know, we're stuck in our own heads and in our own, you know, we might not feel that we're good enough, or like we have this imposter syndrome. Do you ever suffer with that? Have you suffered with that? And how do you conquer it?
Well, that's a definite yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm female. I think females do it a bit more. I'm Irish. I think Irish people do a bit more, and I'm me. So yeah, yes, absolutely. I mean, there are times when I have wanted to do things and I've been afraid. Like every time I've changed, I was afraid to do it. And that, just because I've changed a lot doesn't mean it gets any less scary. But I do always, what guides me in life is always, always, always my gut. And if my gut, it's so simple. If my gut says do it, I do it. It's like literally that simple. So I just know it's right. So I just listen to it. And the fears are more in your head.
Yes.
And if you can like zone them out, I'm not joking. This is what I do with my fears. You'll think I'm nuts. I imagine when I'm like, if I'm awake at night and I'm worrying about something or stressing or any time, I kid you not, this is what I do. I imagine a candy floss stick. I stick it into my brain. I swirl it around, gather up all my worries and thoughts, and I put it somewhere. I used to throw it away, but a friend of mine said, no, you have to put it into the ground so it doesn't land on anybody else.
Brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, I know. And the Hawaiians put their worries into a boat, apparently, and send it off. So yeah, I do all those things.
Wow, that's brilliant. That's brilliant, because yes, in the middle of the night is when it usually comes up, like, and how does it then work? Does that take away the fear does that get you through the process?
Doing it takes the fear away. Just doing it. It's like there was a book, and I did read it at one time in my life, and it was called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And when I read it, it was really powerful to me. And then I read it subsequently another time when I didn't need it. And I thought, well, sure, this is all obvious. But that's the thing about those books. Sometimes we need them, and sometimes, we don't. But it was a really good, for me at that time, I can't even remember which of the many changes I was about to do.
Yeah.
Or needed to do and hadn't realized yet that I needed to change. And I do think that you do have to, I really do believe that you cannot let fear stop you living the life that you want to live. I just don't think you should give in to the power of it, or give it power. I just think you should just listen to your gut and just go with it. Absolutely.
100%. What advice would you give to somebody? And let's start with writing, storytelling in the novel, as we know, for a novel. What advice would you tell somebody who feels like they have a book inside of them? And I think there's a lot of people that feel that they have a book inside them. First of all, what advice would you give for them to start? How would they start? What do you do first?
The first thing I would do is I would write something that you're passionate about. Mm-hmm. That's like, if you start with something that you really believe in, something you really want to communicate, that it'll have an energy. And I think that's really powerful. I think you have to different people write in different ways. And some people like to go over and over and over their work. More literary writers often. My advice would be don't. It would be like go A to Z, don't stop. Now, and when I say go A to Z, sometimes I'll get ideas for a scene that takes place in, I don't know, whatever becomes chapter 23 or something. That's the great thing about computers. Write it down, get it down. Don't worry about it. Now, when I say don't read over, you can read over what you did yesterday just to get back into the flow of where you were. But don't be pouring over it, because A, you'll ruin it. Mm-hmm. But you're going to edit out the first chapter anyway, because it's usually just getting you into the story. And C, you just want momentum. You want to keep going. You want to enjoy it. You want your characters to take over and get you, tell you where to go. That's the joyful moment. So something you're passionate about in your own voice that's absolutely true to you. Don't try and be this literary, voice, or, because it'll just seem stilted.
Yes.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Read, because you learn so much by reading, and it's a pleasure as well. Else, and I found the artist way very helpful. Some people hate it. I will say that. But for some writers, one of the things in the artist way that I feel is really helpful is that when you wake up in the morning before you even get out of bed, just handwrite, 3 pages. It just says 3 pages, just never says the size of the page aside. I think it's hilarious because it's funny. But you write just stream of consciousness, 3 pages. And that's supposed to get rid of all your kind of blah that's going to get in the way of your writing. And now that's gone out of the way and off you go. You're not writing that to write your story, although sometimes something will come up and that will be an idea or whatever, but that's not really the reason why you're writing it. But I find that really helpful. Having said that, am I doing it now? No. I should be.
And do you feel there's value to journaling?
Even just, my journaling is more a case of when I'm out and about, like having a walk or whatever, some idea comes into my head, I'll just type it into notes in my
your phone.
That's my journaling. I won't actually sit down to write in my journal. I won't but that's just me. Some people everyone's different. That's the thing. Yeah. But for me, it's my journaling is more like get away from the computer, go for a walk, have a swim, blah, blah, blah. And then that's when I find ideas really come to me.
Yeah, brilliant. And as far as the process now, now the world has changed so much, and self-publishing is much easier than it used to be. Are opportunities easier for people that want to write now?
100%. Like, I love the fact that you can, write your own work. You can put it up on Amazon. You can find out what people like. You can, you can take anything down if you want to. You can, you have complete control. Like, what I found amazing was when I published my first book was the amount of information you get. So you get this behind the scenes thing where you can see how many books you're selling a day, where you're selling them. So if you do a promotion, you can see the result of it. And it's really, really helpful. And it's so interesting because when I was published traditionally, you would really not be given much information at all. You'd have, if you were lucky, 2 sort of reports a year, which is sort of confusing your royalty statement. And really you learned very little. You felt very disempowered. And when you self-publish, it's the complete opposite. You feel very empowered. And there is a whole self-publishing community. It's wonderful. Like you're not sitting there having somebody else decide. I will say that
completely understand having gone from working with labels to releasing music independently is the same feeling.
And honestly, like the traditional publishers, once you start self-publishing, they just feel like dinosaurs. They feel like so slow, so out of the loop. Also, one thing that they do, which is very frustrating for new writers, is they'll have a stable of authors each publisher will have, and they'll have of that slate, they'll have maybe 2 massive sellers, and they'll put all their marketing budget into those because they'll feel that they'll get a return on that. So they don't support people universally the same. So you, as an author, then will feel not so empowered. Yeah. Having said that, you are also expected at the same time to go out and do an awful lot of your own publicity anyway. Like, in fact, if you're somebody who's out there wanting to get published now in the traditional way, and I know lots of people will only feel that they're properly published if they're, published the traditional way, and that's fine. I understand that there are people like that, and I accept that. I totally. But for those people, one of the things that they can be doing in addition to writing a good book, what is a good book? Hey, that's another day's. But writing their best work in addition to that. To actually start building a social media profile, because I kid you not, publishers make the decision now, not just on the story, they'll make the decision on, how many followers do they have? That's X amount of readers, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I was mentioning before we got on camera that I am developing a course in personal branding, because I've seen from my 20 years of working with brands, but also with working with entrepreneurs and what they do, and how that same fear that keeps people away from doing the thing that they are passionate about keeps them from showing up on social media, on whichever, whether it's writing a blog or, whatever, because there are different mediums that you can use now. And I think it's so important if you're an entrepreneur or if you're an artist. And in this case, it's like confirmation to hear you say the same thing for a writer, or even for somebody who wants to get if you get hired, if you're in an interview for a job, they're going to look at your social media, right? And so if you portray yourself rather than somebody else telling your story, but you tell your story, that's one thing, right? Like you authentically being you. And also you can show your craft and your art through your social media channels, right?
And connect with like-minded people as well, which is nice. It's probably one of the nicest things.
Yeah, exactly.
And some people will lean towards a medium, for example, I always used to like Twitter best. Like I was one of the first people on Twitter, and oh my God, it was such a great place back then. It was just, we were all like adventurers heading into the unknown. And I remember going off on a road trip with people I never met before, a women's writers conference. It was such fun. But now Twitter is so different. But you can still have an okay experience on Twitter if you just follow the people you want to follow, and just don't have stuff sent to you. You just choose your option at the top. But for artists, Instagram is lovely. Using that, I'm starting to use that a little bit more. I do also use Facebook, not as much, but at the same time, you do get a very good response from Facebook as well. But I find that whatever the medium for you, some people just love one in particular. I think it's like each one has a kind of a personality.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever fits you best, or whatever you feel most comfortable with.
Yeah.
As far as you can, as long as you can show your voice and and create a community around you because you're adding value in some way.
True, and you stick with your community on the thing. And so, for example, let's say Twitter, and you stick to writing about your craft or whatever it is you're doing, and not have your message, filtered into all sorts of things. Exactly. Then, that's you are creating a brand. So I'm speaking to the conversion there, all this work.
No, absolutely. Absolutely brilliant. No, fantastic. How about, I want to ask you this because I don't know. Obviously, you know my kids. You met them when they were very little, and you met Nathan, my youngest one, when he was 1, I think. So he's 9, and for the past, he taught himself to read when he was very young, when he was 3, because and from that point on, he's been passionate about reading, and now he wants to write a book. That's like he wants to be an author, and he also wants to develop video games, but he's really into developing the characters, like even now developing the characters and what goes around him. So, and of course I'm an artist, so of course I'm going to encourage him. So for little kids that are so passionate from this age and want to become storytellers, what advice would you give to parents and to them?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, don't even say, I want to be a writer. He can be a writer right now. He can write now. He can start writing his stories now. He doesn't have to put them out anywhere, but he can be a storyteller now. He doesn't have to wait. I just don't agree with this concept of when I grow up, I will be. Like, certainly if it's an art, you can do it now.
Yeah, he tapes, when he was younger, he would tape paper together and then he would draw and then he would write. It was like he would do the graphic, the illustration and the writing.
My big thing I would say to parents is do not correct them. Don't correct them, because it can stop them completely in their tracks, and I would encourage them not to show their work to people who are critical or in any way critical, because that can stop them doing what they do. And if they want you to read them and just pick out all the good stuff. It's amazing how vulnerable we are as creatives, and one comment from somebody can stop a person writing, and that's just a crime in my view. And who cares if the spelling's wrong? Spelling doesn't matter. Spelling doesn't matter. We've all these spell checks. If you read, you learn your spelling. You pick it up anyway. So don't be correcting their spelling or their grammar. It's all about the story. You know what I mean? Like I was asked to come into a school and give a talk about story, and then judge a competition. And off they went to write their stories, and I wasn't hearing anything. And I was like, because I was so looking forward to reading their work. And then I eventually rang the teacher and I said, what's happened, the competition? She said, oh, well, I'm judging them. And I said, well, I'm not giving the prizes unless I judge them, like I'm judging them. And so then I read, and she had judged all of them. Oh. And I swear to God, she had judged them on spelling, grammar. She hadn't a clue. And she had given, the top marks to people who didn't deserve it from a story point of view, who could have been her favorites. And to me, it was a real lesson in, just don't. Don't put your work in front of people. I mean, you can't help teachers. That's what they do. But I mean, I always said to my kids when they were going to school, teachers are teachers. They'll go to school, they'll learn school stuff, they'll come back, but doesn't mean they know everything. I think that's an important thing to say, because some teachers are absolutely brilliant. A kid will recognize a brilliant teacher. Everybody knows a brilliant teacher straight away. Yep. But I think it's important for them to have this thing in their head that it's not as if because they're a teacher they know everything.
Right.
They don't learn story, they learn grammar and stuff like that. And really, from a story point of view, it's like, for example, I'll give you an example. What was that brilliant novel? What was it called? A young adult novel, a really breakthrough novel about Black Lives Matter. I'm trying to think. Anyway, it was written phonetically, and the grammar and everything, was spelling, everything was all over the place, but it was meant to be.
Yes.
And it was so good. What was it called?
I don't know. I have Precious coming in my head, but I know that's not what you're talking about.
It's definitely not Precious.
No.
The Hate You Give, isn't it?
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. I haven't read it.
Brilliant. It's so good. It was made a movie. Yeah, no, it's definitely The Hate You Give.
Yes.
I'm now Googling in the middle of a call.
This is something you do.
What? I'm always Googling.
You do.
I think it's The Hate You Give with a U, the letter U. I'm just confirming now. You go ahead and chat to me. I'm still. Yeah, it is The Hate You Give. I was right. Yay!
Yay! Oh, it's The Hate You Give. Okay, I'll have to. I have to see that. No, fast. That's brilliant advice, and that's fantastic. I have obviously there are a lot of books of yours that I really love, and I can't wait to see the short film and see and see one of these butterfly novels becoming a film. I can't wait to see that. There's a book that's very special to me, and it's this one because, and I have to say, so first of all, this is your beautiful daughter. For the people that are listening to the podcast, I'm holding up a book by Denise called Through the Barricades, and it's got beautiful Aimee on the cover. It's about the well, it has to do with the Irish the Irish Revolution.
Yeah, it's a love story about sort of friends to lovers, that sort of category, and it's about a boy and a girl who, the boy falls for the girl first, and they're from the opposite side of the tracks, and the girl's father dies in the prologue, and he saves her, and because he's saving her from the fire, he tells her to do something with her life, not realizing he's actually putting huge pressure on her. So she's always trying to do something better. And so there was a lot of injustice in Ireland because it was ruled by England, and they were trying to keep us down and poor and powerless. And so there was a lot of poverty. And so this girl, Maggie, tries to help the poor. And then by doing that, she realizes just how unjust everything is. And she becomes a rebel in a big revolution that happened in 1916. And the boy, I love him, he loves her. Is always trying to protect her, but ends up on the opposite side. It's complicated, on the opposite side of the revolution to her. But it's also happening, the way you learn in history in school, you learn sort of strands. You learn about, it's called the Easter Rising, and separately you learn about World War I. But they were all happening at the same time, and they're completely interconnected. So both of the stories are happening at the same time, and Irish people, even though Ireland was neutral or whatever, and a lot of Irish people joined up with the British Army, because they were promised that when the war was over, which they thought would be 3 months, Ireland would get freedom. So a huge amount of the rebels went off and died in World War One instead of fighting for Ireland. So yeah, it's a love story.
It's a beautiful love story. And you wrote to me to Dearest Maru, with love and gratitude, niece. And there's actually, this is the most special book to me. There's a dedication in the book to my very great friend, Maruja Bogart, with love, laughter, and lilies. And I am forever, forever grateful and love this so much and love you so much. And I'm delighted that you were able to share this time with me. Even though you were in LA working, helping your friend on a film, you jumped on when I asked you if you would be a guest on the podcast. And that means so very much to me.
And congratulations on it. It's going to be great. I mean, I've already listened to the other ones you've done, and they were great. So it is great.
Thank you.
A better woman to do it too.
This was really great. And I wish you all the best with everything that you're doing. You are such an inspiration. Thank you for taking the time and propelling budding artists and storytellers to get out there and get their story down and do it, and not, let fear stand in the way. And this is exactly what, for me, the podcast is all about, is encouraging and empowering and inspiring. And as they say in Ireland, no better woman.
And have fun and play. That's what I think as well. Like, we're doing it because we love it, and it's very easy to forget that.
Yes.
When the challenges appear, but I think it's really helpful to remind ourselves that actually just have fun and play.
Yes, absolutely. Well, with that, we're having fun and we're playing. Have a great stay in LA, and people, thank you so much for tuning in and for watching and for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Mara.
Thanks, niece.